Welcome to the Bye Bye Martin Maldonado edition of Sharing Socks. I'm Duty Geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent, Will. We were in the All-Star break the day after the All-Star game where Garrett Crochet looked just fine and did not hurt his standing for being traded to rich teams that play well at all. That's bound to happen in the next 2 weeks. Martin Maldonado let go today, DFA'd, after he got his average over 100. I think it's nice that they waited till he got a three-figure batting average to do it.
It's a good way to go out.
Yeah, and I think he is out. I mean, he's a 37-year-old catcher. Very, very few catchers get to make it to 37 and still be in the big leagues. That's a rough life. Chucky Robinson got called up, so he will be the backup catcher to Corey Lee, whose average seems to go down 20 points a day. So we're not getting any offense, even with Maldonado gone, unless Chucky gets hot. Also, Nick Senzel Day.
Yeah.
White Sox signed Nick Senzel, a one-time first-round draft choice, I believe, the same year as Zach Collins, which shows you something about that first round.
Yeah. Well.
I looked up Senzel. He's terrible. Of course, he was cut by Washington. He's terrible. He's a career negative WAR this year. But I thought, well, he's one of these versatile guys. Can play just about anywhere on the field. And you thought, well, maybe he's good at defense. So I looked it up. He's horrible.
Yeah.
He plays infield and outfield, and he's horrible at every single position that he plays. Defensive runs scored, D-WAR, the zone type statistics. He's horrible at every one of them. And this was supposed to be the year of the defense, which obviously did not happen with Mulder Young. But what the hell? And they cut fan favorite, one of the favorite guys of all White Sox fans. Danny Mendick is gone. He's off the 40-man even. And Danny was doing nothing. I'm not saying, oh, God, we got to have Danny Mendick. But if you're going to have a stinko utility man, keep the guy everybody loves.
I'm a lot more surprised about Mendick being gone than signing Senzel, because when I saw that we signed Senzel, I certainly was like, well, this is if Paul DeJong's not packing his bags already, this was the sign that Paul DeJong needs to pack his bags.
He was gone. You knew he was gone.
Right. I just mean
for whatever that you get.
I just mean like they replaced him before he left. So this is a warm body to play somewhere in the infield when De Jong goes, because obviously he is going to go. And fortunately for us, he has had an okay enough offensive year, especially power-wise.
Yeah, power-wise, 16 homers.
That they're going to get something okay for him. They're not going to get anything special.
It won't be much. He's a rental. His defense, which used to be good, has been horrid. I think he may be the worst shortstop in the majors defensively. If not, he's very close to it.
I do think what you're going to get for him is a prospect that could be good someday. I think
could be a useful major league player, a fourth outfielder at the very least, something like that.
I think previously you were going to get a guy who truly had no chance of being a Major League Baseball player. And I think because of the power numbers, you're now going to get a guy who could be a Major League Baseball player. And I think for a rental like De Jong, that's actually a pretty good return. It's certainly when you sign Paul De Jong, you're certainly not thinking, oh, we're going to get anything for him really at the break. And he pumped out 16 home runs. Somebody needs a guy who, even if he hits 210 and plays shortstop, he'll probably go somewhere and play second.
Well, they've been playing him. You're out in California, so maybe you don't get to see the games, but they played him, I think, the whole Pittsburgh series at third.
Yeah.
So maybe, they may have had a conversation for somewhere where some other team has gone, boy, we could use somebody at third. Usually you have to hit better if you're at third.
I definitely think
that's part of that was to give Nicky Lopez time at short.
Yeah.
I think they want Nicky at short once De Jong's gone.
Right.
But actually, fact of the matter is, De Jong looked pretty good at third. I think the first two games he had nothing but pop-ups. In the last game, he had some Rockets that he handled very nicely. So,
well, I think DeJong is destined to play third or second at wherever he ends up. I don't think any of the teams competing for him, or who I think will be competing for him in the market, are going to actually need him to be a shortstop. I think what they will need him to be is an above average power second baseman, or just a somewhat decent third baseman. I don't anticipate him going anywhere to become a shortstop. His defensive numbers at short are just so bad. And
backup short, utility infielder.
And if you look at the places where there's a good chance he will go, I mean, the Dodgers are so desperate for infielders that can do anything that they could be looking for a guy that I mean, who doesn't want a second baseman who could hit 16 home runs, or 12
in half a year, a little over half a year.
And look at a team like the Yankees. They don't really need someone at shortstop. What they do need is, LeMahieu at third base is somehow hitting under 200, and at second base you've got Gleyber Torres, who he might as well not have a glove. He does some interesting things from time to time offensively, but not that often. So when you look at the big money teams who are going to be able to trade for some of these people at the deadline, I think competitive teams, I think there's a good spot at a lot of places for DeJong at third or second.
Yeah, I think the other thing that could go with him, because the two teams you just mentioned are obviously up at the top of the Garrett Crochet crowd. Right. And that could be a case of, because we know that the Yankees are saying, no, we can't have our top outfielder guy. And apparently the Dodgers are not offering enough to make the White Sox smile yet, although we're 2 weeks away. Things happen. But you could toss in DeJong. We'll take Paul DeJong and we'll Garrett Crochet, and so we'll up the ante a little bit on what you hand back. That's very possible.
That is exactly what. So that's exactly what I think is going to happen. So my prediction is, of course, the Dodgers did not give a good enough package for Crochet early on, but that was not a deadline offer. That was we're trying to get it before the deadline when the premium's only 20% and not 80%. And it was smart of the White Sox not to take whatever that deal was, because I'm sure it was a low ball. Friedman is a notorious low baller for in-season trades. But the Dodgers now, of course, have no starting pitchers that are healthy, and then except sort of Glass now. And then you've got no infielders that are healthy or able to hit the baseball or able to catch the baseball. So I think what you're looking at now, and this is my prediction, is that Crochet and DeJong will come together to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers will give up a nice package of prospects. They have a plethora of prospects that have virtually no chance of getting playing time in the majors because their best prospects are all in positions that are occupied by superstars.
Yeah, your top prospect is a catcher first baseman.
Top two, really. So,
Smith and Freeman are going to be there for a while.
And you've got Cartaya and Rushing. I mean, those are two guys that are absolutely major league prospects. Will Smith is with us for a decade, and Freddie Freeman's with us for as long as Freddie Freeman wants to be with the Dodgers. So it's definitely a situation where those guys could really both go. I think that the Dodgers will end up making the deal for Crochet and DeJong. And I think DeJong will end up at second or third base defensively for the Dodgers. Because if you look at the last,
Kopech will come into the relief corps,
which is also very possible. Although the bullpen for the Dodgers is actually pretty fantastic. But but Crochet could be a guy. When you talk about the innings that he's racked up, he may not come over and be a starter very long. He may come over and be in the bullpen. He
certainly won't be a starter very long, very often.
Right.
They'll have to put him in a once a week rotation or less than that, and 80 pitches, and not his fault. But when you have not pitched any more than he's pitched in the last 4 years, you can't take that chance of just destroying the guy. So, and you want him in October. You got to have him in October. You want him starting the first day of the playoffs, first day of the World Series.
And I think the reason I'm leaning towards the Dodgers over another team that would be desperate, which I think is the Yankees, is that the Yankees aren't willing to part with that top prospect, and they're not deep enough behind that to make a great deal.
Well, Baltimore's kind of a off chance too, because if it was big money, Baltimore wouldn't be a consideration. But Baltimore's got a hell of a farm system. I mean,
I don't know why they'd give anyone up right now. I mean, Baltimore, they're still kind of ahead of their own curve. You know, Baltimore was great last year. They're great this year, and kind of next year is the year that they're supposed to be good in terms of their rebuild. They just have done maybe the greatest rebuild of my lifetime.
Another starting pitcher would not, and it wouldn't have to be Crochet. It could be Fetty. I mean, the Sox are in great shape because they got two very desirable starting pitchers.
See, I think Fetty is more likely to go to Baltimore because Baltimore is not going to want to give up this glutton of top prospects, but I think they would be willing to give up one of them. And that's why I think you probably see someone like Fetty go to a market like Baltimore, because Baltimore is set up right now with who they have to be World Series contenders for the next 6 or 7 years. I mean, that farm system plus the guys who are already up is just incredible. It's amazing what Baltimore has done. And so I think a guy like Fetty is most likely to go to Baltimore. I think Crochet and DeYoung are more likely to go to the Dodgers or something like that. Which brings us to Luis Robert, who I do officially think is going nowhere.
That's my guess too. Now, every time you go online and you plug in White Sox and you plug in the name of any of the likely White Sox guys, every town has got some trade that they want to make. Every competing team, which in the National League is everybody but Colorado and Miami, they've got some proposal that this is going to do it. And whether it's a blogger or even a kind of semi-official thing, they've all got some idea. One of the things that strikes me is as we go beyond this summer and out, and you go, does Crochet go or does Robert go? This fall, free agent pitchers, it's like the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Every great pitcher in the majors except Crochet is a free agent at the end of this year. Position players, particularly outfielders, it's a disaster. Soto. Yeah. What you've got in the outfield is Juan Soto. So that's good for somebody who wants to spend $700 million. There
are what, 1 or 2 teams that are going to offer.
It's the Yankees or the Dodgers. Maybe the Mets.
And in reality, it's the Yankees.
It'll be the Yankees.
If you watched the All-Star game and saw the camaraderie between Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, if the Yankees offer Juan Soto the deal, he's staying a Yankee. Like that powerhouse relationship is just. It's too strong. Judge is going to want Soto there. The Yankees fans are going to want Soto there. The Yankees are going to want Soto there. He's going to get a deal that's probably only going to be second ever to Ohtani's contract from the Yankees. And it's possible a team like the Dodgers. The Mets, I think, is a good guess for someone who'll be competitive. But the number that the Mets are going to have to give over the Yankees for Soto to go to the Mets instead of the Yankees, I just don't. Why would Soto go to the Mets unless it's an insane number over the Yankees? Because the Mets aren't going to be good for a long time. I mean, the Mets are a disaster. They're an absolute disaster.
And after Soto, if you look down the outfielders, the next one that is pretty good is Corey Bellinger. That's a big drop-off, and it's certainly a drop-off below Luis Robert Jr. And from Bellinger, it goes down at the poof. I think Verdugo is probably the next best guy out there. So Luis would be a very valuable property because people aren't going to be able to buy an outfielder this winter. They're just not out there on the market. So they're going to have to trade for one if they need one, and a lot of people need one. I think he's going to be very hot property in the winter. Crochet is a hot property anytime, but I don't think he increases in value in the winter because there's so damn many pitchers who are free agents.
Totally.
And all the rich teams will be able to get somebody or two somebodies out of that list.
Yeah, I think Luis will become a hot topic in the winter. I just don't see anybody offering quite. I mean, as people have said, to get Luis Robert by July 31st, you would probably have to offer the greatest prospect package in the history of the trade deadline. And I just don't see anybody doing that this year. I don't see the fit necessarily with a team that has what's required to get him and would be willing to part with what's required to get him.
Yeah, I think that's the likelihood. As soon as we say that, we will turn this off and find out that he just got traded today. But
it could happen. I just don't think it's going to.
A couple of things. We need to come back, I guess, and kind of talk draft. There's one story in the draft that I really, really love that I'd like to get in there. But before that, there is a site called awfulannouncing.com. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay. Awfulannouncing.com takes surveys, reader, viewer, whatever surveys of who the worst announcers or best announcers in the major leagues are. And this year, survey has just been completed in the last couple of days. And guess who's 30th?
I feel like I know. I feel like it's not even a guess.
So the White Sox are dead last. Now, there's a point of fairness to say that the bottom teams in this survey are all terrible teams. So it's not necessarily the announcers. Right? The bottom teams are the White Sox and the Rockies and the Marlins and the A's. But last year, when the White Sox were almost equally horrible with Jason Benetti and Stoney, 10th. Not 30th, 10th. Benetti, so they go from 10th to 30th, Benetti switching over to Shriven. Listen, I've watched enough games in the last week or two. He's getting better. He's not good. He's adequate. He's growing up a little. He's not trying to be this super hot dog jerk that he was for a long time. And maybe they've got him under control. Maybe somebody took him aside and say, look, kid, your job's to say how many outs there are. But Benetti goes to Detroit, which last year was 30th, and this year is 10th.
Wow. I mean,
now, this is just reader survey. This is not, we're not going on stats here. We don't have batting averages or something, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean I think reader survey is valid. Those are the people who are listening to games and watching games. So I think that makes total sense. I think Benetti is worth 20 spots on the list. He's as good as anybody, really. And losing him, we all, when he left, we were like, wow, that's actually the worst thing that could have happened to the White Sox. It's a bummer. It's a bummer that it's 30th in that category as well. But I also think it makes sense because if you're going to be 30th in every category on the field, you might as well be 30th in a category that's on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one category the White Sox do well is milkshakes, but that's not a one that gets a lot of surveys done.
This is one milkshake. Everybody talks about this milkshake. Everybody says, can you believe how bad this year has been? That anytime you talk about the White Sox being bad, the one thing that people talk about is the milkshake, and it's one milkshake. It's one milkshake, a milkshake that certain diners have served for years. And yet here we are. It's the one shining light. Well, let's take our break here. We'll come back. We'll talk about the draft, and we'll talk about what the second half might look like. Because believe it or not, the White Sox are going to have to play another half season, just under.
Almost a half. 64 games. If they sweep all 64 games left, they could possibly be in on the wild card.
What's funny is I think they wouldn't.
They probably will just short.
I think we are in a rare scenario where if our team won out a half of a season after the All-Star break, they would not make the playoffs. And that's a special place to be. So hang with us. We'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We talked trades and everything trades in the first half. Now let's talk. Another thing happens in this All-Star break-ish weekend. We get the MLB draft, which is the least exciting of all of the major sports drafts, the least interesting, the least show-offish, because you're drafting a bajillion guys.
It compensates for the fact that it's by far the best All-Star game.
Oh, yeah.
So worst draft, best All-Star game. It balances out.
And this year's All-Star game, once you got past the 8,000 gimmicky cowboy-related things that Texas decided to do, was actually pretty fun All-Star game to watch.
It was a good game. The uniforms could done without.
The uniforms were heinous, but it felt like, and it hasn't felt this way to me in a while, it felt like the best players trying to play their best against the best players. And I know that's what an All-Star game should always feel like, but you felt kind of like there were a lot of nerves out there. You felt like these guys really wanted to best the other best. And of course,
and well, you had a lot of young guys this year. I think probably more young guys than usual. And I think that makes a difference. They're proving themselves against the best guys that maybe they don't happen to face during the course of the season.
There is also it is so real. I can tell you as an Angelino, the Ohtani effect of guys who are just want to play baseball with and against Ohtani ups everybody. It truly ups everybody. I mean, it's an amazing thing to see. But yes, we did see some really cool things from y'all.
Now I have a question, because it looked at a couple points during the game, they'd have a camera on Shohei, and it looked like he was talking to the guy next to him. You've been around him. Does he speak much of any English at all?
Yeah. It's very, very little. I saw his translator, Will, who is lovely, his new translator, Will. I saw him in the dugout as well. So he was there to translate for Shohei at the All-Star game. But I do think that over the past few months, maybe there's a reason he's relying less on translators these days. But it does seem like he has actually been learning more English. There was a brief sort of on-field interview with him where he didn't even have the translator, and it was kind of one-word answers. But it was in English, and Shohei was doing it and understanding it and speaking. So I do think he is learning a lot more English. And I think Yamamoto is a little more excited about learning English, and that's probably kind of infectious. They're next to each other in the clubhouse. And
the draft. Let's get to the draft.
Let's talk the draft.
Number one, we get this mighty left-handed pitcher from Arkansas, who we hope is really good, passing on a chance to get probably the best hitter in the draft when we need hitters more than pitchers. But as the old saying goes, you can't have too much pitching. So Smith is apparently really, really, really good. So we'll hope that he doesn't go down with Tommy John needs in the next couple of months. But Higgins Smith is great.
He's going to go down with Tommy John. It's just a matter of when he's going to go down.
Yeah, if we would wait a few years, that'd be nice.
Everybody's getting Tommy John from here on out. Everybody's getting Tommy John. So it's just about when you get Tommy John. I've watched a lot of tape of this kid since we drafted him. I hadn't really heard of him, but I've watched a lot of his highlights. I like what I see.
So he's got over 17 strikeouts per 9 innings. That's not Little League. That's the SEC. That's a pretty good league.
It's a really good league, and he was on a good team in that league, playing very, very good teams. A lot of guys who are now Major League Baseball players after this draft. I watched quite a bit, and it's not Paul Skeens electric, because nothing is, but I will say it was a guy. He is a guy who looks like he is going to be an effective Major League pitcher,
and probably fairly soon. You get the college guys. He could be 2026. Maybe a September call up next year or something. They rushed Garrett, but it turned out fine, other than needing surgery and having to go away for 2 years. Next, Caleb Bonnemer, a high school shortstop, and then Blake Larson, a high school pitcher. they're going to be farther away. The White Sox are saying, well, we've been scouting the Midwest, which nobody else scouts, and that's why we're picking up these guys. One from Michigan and one from Iowa.
What is the what? That can't be true.
Well, I said, so we're putting a concentration here because warm weather attracts the best players. So cold weather places, they don't play as much, blah, blah, blah. You know, okay. I mean, you played against a future major leaguer who would have, I think he may have played in one All-Star game, was a Cy Young candidate one year until he blew out his arm after turning down like a $100 million contract, Justin Masterson. But obviously, Justin not only played in Ohio, where you played with and against him, but went to college in Minnesota. But people nationals. But anyway, so those two guys, high school guys, after that, it was all college players. Next 15, all college players. Basically split between pitchers and position players. But the one I really want to make sure we get into here is Lyle Miller-Green.
I don't even know who that is.
17th round. I'll tell you, you're going to know about this guy. And I hope that he makes the major leagues, even if it's just a hanger on. Lyle Miller-Green from Austin Peay.
Right.
Was born in Siberia. And he was born in Siberia. He was a Russian orphan. An American family adopted him at the age of 6 months. This is one of the greatest stories you could ever have in baseball. This guy would make it to the major leagues. He's the two-way guy. He's both a pitcher and an outfielder. So if he made it as I don't think he'll make it as a two-way guy, but if you make it either guy, if he makes it a relief pitcher, a middle relief, and his nickname is the Siberian Sultan of Swat. And isn't that the greatest nickname in the history of baseball? That's
a mouthful. That's a mouthful. It's too many syllables for a nickname, but it is a cool nickname.
Well, you can't fit it on the jersey. That's tough.
Have you done any research here? Would he be the first Siberian-born player in the MLB? I feel like he probably would be.
I think the probability is high. I have not looked for sure. There are sites that tell you about that kind of thing. I didn't think to look it up.
Actually, he wouldn't be. This is actually pretty crazy because now that you're saying it, do you know who the first Siberian pitcher and player in Major League Baseball was? Russian-born in Siberia. Do you know?
I guess I should from the way you're staring at me here.
It's crazy.
No.
Bartolo Colon.
Oh, my God. Really?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. But you believed it for a millisecond.
Yeah, Bartolo's got fairly dark skin for a guy from Siberia. I was thinking, could he have been a Cuban who got sent up there? And said no.
And he's pretty well fed for a place where it's kind of tough to come about food a lot of the time. No, of course not. I'm just trying to add to the legend of Bartolo Colon.
Lyle Miller-Green. Lyle Miller-Green.
That would be very, very cool. All right, I'm rooting for Lyle Miller-Green. The Siberian
Absolutely.
Sultan
and Miller-Green is hard enough to get on the jersey, let alone Siberian Sultan of Swat.
If he comes up, if he makes it to the majors as a two-way player, is that the greatest story in the history of baseball besides Jackie Robinson?
Boy, it's right up there.
Because that's just crazy. That would be mind-blowing. Yeah, so draft overall, how do you feel?
I'm not a draft guy. I don't follow them enough to know. Boy, you see the write-ups after they pick Smith in the first round. Somebody going, "Well, you should have gotten this guy. You should have gotten this guy," or somebody else saying, "No, they did really great." I don't know. I have no idea. And obviously, not even the pros don't know because somebody who was commenting on this year's draft pointed out, and I think it was the Zach Hollinger, not a single successful player from the first round and 8 All-Stars from the second round. So,
wow.
So, they don't really know what's going on. It's a crapshoot on how these guys develop.
Anybody who was online commenting, they should have gone with this guy, should have gone with that guy. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, you have no idea. Like, half of these guys aren't going to be in the game really 8 months from now. So it's just crazy to ever think like, oh, I know who you should have gotten in the draft. But that being said, I feel pretty good about a lot of the guys we got. let's see who pans out. Let's see who doesn't. You never really know. So let's turn our attention to this upcoming second half of the season. I think it's only fair to make some second half predictions. Now, we are going to start the second half of the season with a pretty rough stretch.
At Kansas City.
At Kansas City, I feel like Kansas City's coming down to earth. But, you know, still going to be kind of tough. We're going to go at Kansas City. We're going to go at Texas. We're going to go to we're going to have the division leader, Seattle. We're going to have Kansas City come here, and you're then going to go to Minnesota. That's a pretty rough stretch to start the second half of the season.
And Minnesota is just getting better.
Minnesota's heating up. That's a team to be afraid of. That's a team to be afraid of right now. Not that we need to be afraid of anyone.
No, it doesn't matter. No. But if scared of the Marlins.
yeah. If you're Cleveland, Minnesota is a cause for concern. And the Royals obviously are, you know, even though they're kind of coming back to reality here a little bit, they're still very good. And they still have a lot of really, really effective players. And in that first series back, we are going to have to face Seth Lugo, who is an all-star and, you know, but potentially still in the Cy Young conversation in the AL. And we are not going to be throwing Crochet or Fetty in that series.
So, Fetty's not pitching in that series. I didn't realize. I hadn't looked.
Fetty's going to pitch the first game against Texas. So, yeah, we are going to start with Flexen, which seems like a loss, Cannon, and Thorpe. But Thorpe is going to go up against Lugo. And if Lugo is going to be his first half self, that's going to be a really tough game. So it's a pretty nasty stretch to start the second half. It lightens.
Who are the pitchers going to be? I mean, not in this next week, because I don't think any deals will be done before then. What's the rotation after this next week?
So you're gonna
Crochet's gone, Fetty's gone, and in the bullpen, Kopech and Brevia are gone.
Yeah,
and maybe more, but at least those guys are gone. Flexen's not impossible. He's been pitching a little better lately. I doubt it. I don't think anybody's going to take Flexen. But you're going to have Flexen, Thorpe, Cannon. Cool looked pretty good.
Yeah,
going, going 4 or 5 innings. He who we do not name is still doing rehab down in Charlotte. I would wish that he would not come up, but they will. And he's got an ERA close to 6 down at AAA, so he's not exactly blowing them away down there. But
I mean, they'll bring him back up just because they're going to need human beings to throw the ball from the pitcher's mound to home plate.
And Nastrini, of course, could be brought back up again if he can somehow get some control.
So, so we have just sort of laid out what the second half rotation after, the next couple weeks could look like. So where does that – so in the first half, the White Sox had the worst record the White Sox have ever had going into an All-Star break. The 27 wins is the fewest wins they've ever had going into an All-Star break. We are 27-71, which does not quite put us on track to be the worst team in this.
No, it's about 118.
However, if we are going to lose the best players on the team, what do you think we are going to look like at the end of the year? This is going to be our official halfway All-Star break prediction for what the record will be at the end of the year.
There's 64 games left. Let's say they win better than a third of them, which would be 22. That would be 43 wins and 119 losses. And all of the futility will be for naught because it won't be the worst modern record ever.
Do you think they can win? What is telling you that they could win 22 games in the second half?
Luck?
Yeah, is that it?
I mean, some of these young pitchers are doing okay. Some of these young guys. Now, some of the young guys, Sosa was doing very well. He's not hitting anymore. He had that one streak at the end of June, early July. He hasn't hit in the last I don't know, 10 days or so, and his average has dropped 30 or 40 points. Corey Lee's not hitting anymore. I don't have faith that Andrew Vaughn can hit beyond around August.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what they have going for them is they're only going to play Minnesota once, and they're only going to play Cleveland once from here on out.
They've already played Colorado and Miami, so those two worst teams in the National League are off the board.
They are going to get 2 series against the A's, and they're going to get 2 series against the Angels. And that's the only reason I think that they might win 20 games in the second half, is because you're going to play 6 against the Athletics and 6 against the Angels. That's 12 games against teams that obviously aren't as bad as you, but are really, really bad. Boy, I don't know. I truly don't know. I am going to make the bold prediction that we lose 121 games.
You think you're going to set the record? Okay, I think they're just going to miss it because the team's disappointing in every other way, so they might as well disappoint us on setting the record.
Which I do think is actually what will happen. But I am making my prediction, my final prediction, as we make our year-end predictions. Mine is going to be that we lose 121 games, because looking at this schedule, I just don't see where the wins are going to come from. And
hang on, keep chatting for a moment while I look something up.
I just don't know where the wins are going to come from. And I agree that luck is the only thing that's going to keep them from doing it. But when you're banking only on luck, it's not usually enough to really get you going for a half of a season. You know, especially getting to the dog days of summer, your best players are gone. You're probably going to see fewer and fewer fans. I mean, who's going to go to a game in August? Who's going to go to a game in September? I think if they made all the games in September free, you wouldn't hit 10,000 people in the seats.
Well, they could give the milkshakes away free too. So, I just what I just did for a moment there was look up, because I usually do it before we talk, but I forgot tonight. Both Pacoda and Fangraphs have them at 108 losses.
What?
Yeah.
Only 108? We're already almost there. Only 108? They think so that means they think they're going to.
Now, I think if Crochet does not get traded and Luis Robert does not get traded, that's possible.
Well, I'm banking on,
and Fetty doesn't get traded.
I'm banking on, my prediction is based on Crochet and Fetty both being traded. Luis Robert
I agree.
Luis is included in my projection. My 121 includes Luis Robert Jr. on the team. But it does depend on Crochet and Fetty being gone. If for some reason Crochet and Fetty stay on the team, then I would put us closer to the 115 to 116. But I do think both of those guys are going to be gone. I absolutely do. So they have us at 108 losses, which is implying that we are going to go 27 and 37 in the second half.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
What? Yeah. What? How could that? Didn't we start this season like 4-100? I don't understand.
That's the computer. That's just, you're plugging in the computers and they're running their little.
You know what that is? That is the computer running an algorithm and going, it can't possibly be true. They can't possibly be what is actually being said. It's telling us 124 losses in the algorithm, but that can't possibly be true. So we'll tone it down a little bit. Sometimes computers are wrong. So we're gonna say 108. We're gonna play it safe. The idea of 108 to me is, and I know I'm arguing with a literal computer here, it's delusional. So all those people out there who are worried about AI taking all the jobs, you're up against a computer that thinks the White Sox are only going to lose 108. Your job is safe for right now. Your job's safe for right Yeah, that's bonkers to me. And secretly, I want the record. I want the record really bad. So that is influencing my decision as well. That is about all the time we have for this week. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, it's back to regular season baseball. We're recording on the day after the All-Star game, so it's another day off for the guys, and back into action such as it is.
I'm really excited for the second half of this season. I think this has been a fun season so far, and I'm really excited to see what happens. I think we're going to see potentially some interesting shifts. I think we're going to see some teams go into some pretty bad slumps and see some teams go on some pretty impressive runs. And I don't know that the teams that are in charge right now, despite some healthy division leads, I think some are safe, but I think we could end up with some playoff teams that aren't currently playoff teams, and that is always what makes for an exciting September.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. Somebody has a big September.
So I'm actually very much looking forward to it. I don't think it is written yet who is going to take these divisions and who's going to win this thing. So yeah, I'd say let's call it there. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you soon right here on Sharing Sox.